Okay, so this is the foot, and I did forget to show you, I did mention that it's got a 2mm opening, but if you get a piping cord and you run it underneath it, and if it fits in the groove of that size, you know you can use it. So this 2mm piping I can use. Now the one thing to note is this is cotton. So if you're going to be putting it in a garment or something that's going to be washed, you should pre-shrink it. Because what happens is if you put in a garment and then you go and wash the garment, this cord could shrink a little bit and that wouldn't be very good. Anyway, back to this. So I'm going to put my foot back on and oops, I'm going to put my thread down through my foot and put my foot on, and then I'm going to put my piping cord inside my fabric, and I'll just find the wrong side, and then I'm going to wrap my piping cord around my fabric around my piping cord. Now my piping cord is the 2mm part, so that's going to sit directly under my foot and it's going to guide perfectly. Now if you have a look on my screen, if I stitch now, the needle would go straight in the middle of the piping cord and that would be no good. So I'm just going to push my needle position, 1, 2 clicks to the right. Now if I just turn my balance wheel, I can see I'm going to put it 1 more. 3 to the right. Am I in the road? So I've put my needle position over here, look. That's center. 1, 2, 3 to the right. And then the needle will sew to the right and sew my piping cord into my piping. When I sew it onto a garment, I will move my needle position 1 click to the left so that it tightens it onto my garment. Actually, I'll put it onto a piece of fabric. So I'm going to now sew that, and my needle position is in the right position, and I don't even have to think what's happening because my piping cord is going to run down the middle of my foot. And I've got the raw edges of my binding together, and now I'm making my own piping. It's brilliant. And because it's biased, I know that I'll be able to sew it easily around a curve. So good. So it's a very nice way to do it, and you can see the effect you get when you use stripes. So this is a great foot. Oh, that's way too slow. This is a great foot. And it's a great way to make your own piping. You don't need to go buying your own piping. Right, I'll just grab my little bit of fabric, sew onto that. And my cat's come to visit. Right, so we have got our made piping. Now this is a beautiful narrow piping. So this is the right side. So I'm going to put it right side to right side, and I'm going to sew it onto the raw edge of my fabric here. Now this is biased, remember, so I can sew it around my curve. But if I sew it around like that, I'm going to still end up with excess fabric. So what I want to do is going around my curve part, I want to clip it. But you don't just clip like this. You take out a triangle so that your binding can go around a really tight curve. So you actually take out a triangle. Okay, like that. So now I can sew around this tight curve and I won't have a problem. So remember, I'm going to put my needle position, 1 click back to the left, and I can pull that out and sew right on the edge here. So my foot goes in the same place, my raw edge of my binding is to the raw edge of my fabric. And by the way, we're not using this in the project. This is just showing you how you can make a nice narrow binding with this foot, because I'm showing you how to make wider piping in a minute. Okay, so just all the way around that edge. Now, if I was going to be enclosing this in another fabric, I would put the fabric on top now and stitch it. Or if you wanted to do it really tidily, you could put your needle position to the right and sew this on first and then put your fabric on afterwards. But can you see by doing that, that's going to sit nice and flat. Okay, so here's two ways you can do it. You can either turn this down now and top stitch this on the edge. Okay, so I can top stitch that on the edge, or you can put another bit of fabric on the top. I'll just grab a piece of this just to show you. Put a bit of fabric on the top and you sew again. You don't have to worry about where you're sewing, because remember the cord is going to feed underneath that, so you don't even need to think about it. You just sew it and you can feel the cord. And this would be if you're going to line something, and there you have a beautiful, actually you could even do that. That is even amazing. But you would have a beautiful corded finish and a very neat binding. So this is a sort of piping I would use on a collar or on a facing or down the front of a jacket or a shirt, because you could either have this as the right side, or you could have the lining as the right side and the thicker fabric on the inside. So it's a really beautiful foot. But look what it was actually, what I've used it for. I don't actually use it for this. I'm going to show you, and I'll put a brighter colour on so you can see. Oh, let's glare. Yeah, now we're talking. Look at this. I'll put on a bright orange so you can actually see. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my machine onto satin stitch. So if you have a look on the screen, I'm leaving this foot on. I'll just clear it so it's all back to straight sewing. I'm going to go to this picture here, which are my quilting stitches, and I'm going to extend this out, and I'm going to push 1354, which is my satin stitch. And you can see it's on 2.5 millimeter width and 0.6. I'm going to roll, oops, I'm going to roll it to 5 because I like a tight satin stitch, and I'm going to put my stitch width down to 2. Okay, so look what you can do with this foot, because it is designed for satin stitching, and 2 millimeter width is great. So if I want to do some satin stitching, I've used this foot in the past for a beautiful fine satin stitch. And you know what I like to do? I like to turn it around. And I like to do a second row, and the second row you make a little bit wider. 2.2. And I go over my satin stitches twice. And it makes a beautiful, beautiful finish. However, this is a thick fabric. If I want to do it on a thin fabric and make a feature, ooh, lucky I've got a little bit of cord here, I can actually put this piece of cord underneath my fabric, and I will make the width a little tiny bit wider to cover that cord. And look what I can do. I can actually just run it wherever. It can be a shape, it can be anywhere, and I can just run this cord underneath, do my first row, because the cord is following underneath. Turn around, lift your foot up, needle up, sorry. Put your foot down, make it a little bit wider, usually just 1 or 2 clicks wider. Now on my second run, look at the beautiful raised satin stitch I get. So this will be a really good thing for stems of flowers. Really, really nice. And I'm using a really fine thread. And you'll notice I don't even need to worry about my bobbin thread coming up. And that's pretty amazing because it is white metrosine, or white gutamin, should I say. But look at the amazing result. And that is with the cord underneath the fabric, and look at the back. You can't even see it, and it's given me a really hard raised satin stitch. I love it. So I like that even more than I like just a double satin stitch. So that's a corded satin stitch. Cool, eh? But that's not even what I'm showing you today, so I'm just going to put that aside. I just had to tell you because it's amazing. And the reason why I'm telling you is because the sheets that I've given you are all about piping, and that piping is also on the sheets, so I thought I had to show you. But today we're going to make a thick piping, and we're going to use our 1.5 inch binding that we've already done, and we're going to use that cord. So we're going to put on, not you're going to use a silky thread, we're going to put on a piping foot. Now there are so many choices, so watch this. You can get a double overlock foot, number 12, and this foot you can double overlock knitted garments together. But the reason why you can is because it's got a groove underneath it. So if you don't knit, obviously, which I don't, but I have in the past bought knitted garments from op shops, chopped them up and sewn them back together, which this foot is useful for. But it's really, really good to sew cord and make your own piping because of the big groove underneath. So also I've used this foot for sewing on pearls and sewing on sequins. However, with my new big machine, I have got another foot which I use, and it's this one, and it's a double cording foot, and you can not only sew one cord, I'll just go like this, but you can actually sew 2 cords together, which I have shown you before. But I can also use this to make my piping. I don't need to use my old foot. So this is called a 59C, but now they've brought out a new one, just to confuse you, and it's called a 60C. So it looks exactly the same as this one, and it's a double cording foot as well. So whether you've got a 60 or a 59C or a 12, you can make your piping. Or, wait, there's more. If you've got your normal 4 zip foot, you need to move your needle position. You can also use it, but these feet make it neater and easier. So I could use one of these feet and just move my needle position to the left, but I would have to hold everything together. With these feet, it just works. So I'm going to show you with these feet. So I'll just use my foot, which is my 59. And remember, I'm going to tell my machine. So I'm going to put my machine back to straight sewing. I'm going to push my foot, and I'm going to use a 59. So I'm going to go 59, and it shows 59C, and I'm pushing 59C. Okay? Right, so I've got my 59C on. Now I'm going to need to move my needle position over, but I will wait till my fabric and cord. So remember, pre-shrink this. So I'm going to start at the other end. And if I've got a seam right at the other end, I'm just going to chop that off because I don't really need to use that little seam. And I'm going to put my cord inside like that. And I'm going to wrap my fabric around and put my raw edges together. And I'm going to get some thread. Here's a good start. I'll get some thread. So I have got that colour will be fine. That colour will do. I do have a few colours of thread, so I don't know why I'm being fussy, but I might as well match it. I do like to take those, the centre of these out because they gum up your thread stand. However, the problem is when I go and take all of that off, you don't know what the number of coloured thread you've got, because these people don't write it on the top. So it's very annoying. So if you can, just take out the centre so that when you put this on and off, you don't get sticky all over it. But if you've got a pen, you could write the number off here if it's a number you love. It's very annoying that they don't do that. But anyway, that's by the by. So pop that on, not too tight. And remember, when you're threading, where's my thread? Always go, make sure it's in. There. Have your foot up, go down, around, let it go, and down. And you won't have any problem with your threads. Again, this foot does not have an opening to put my thread in. So I like to push my foot up and pull my thread through. Okay, so remembering it's on centre needle position, and I do not want it on centre needle position, because if I have it on centre needle position, I may stitch right down beside it. However, I've got a foot that has got two places to put my piping. So if I put my needle down, my needle position is going to be okay. So I want it a little bit tighter, so I'm going to push my needle position one position, and that's going to be perfect. So I don't really have to do too much with this foot. So I'm just putting my raw edges together. I'm starting to sew and just checking I'm happy with where my position is. And now I'm just going to sew all the way down here. And I just put my fingers there. And once I've got it started, I can just, it'll just feed itself anyway. So just go like that. Make sure you've got your raw edges together. You know, I'm using cotton fabric. I'm not making it tight at this stage because I'm just making my piping, because I'm going to be stitching it on later on. So I'm just making it and not worrying about it being too tight. I just want to sew it together at this stage. So you can have a whole lot of fun with your piping. Look at this beautiful fabric. This is a K facet. Really lovely, funky little designs. And when you make your piping, you're going to end up with a really interesting pattern on the edge of your work. So as I mentioned, this project, I am going to make one out of recycled jeans. So I'm going to show you how to use that fabric in a minute. So once I've made my piping, I will just put it aside for later. And I probably don't need to make too much for now. So I'll stop there and just cut it and put that aside for later. Okay, so there's my beautiful piping that I've made, properly biased, because, oh, I'll need to make it bigger than that for what I'm going to do next, because it's going to go round in a circle. So I do need to make a little bit more than that. That doesn't look like it'll be long enough. So I'll just come back up, join that back on, reverse where I stopped, and make it a little bit longer, because the piece I'm going to make and quilt next is quite long, quite a big area. So I'm just going to put that onto there. And that should do it for now. So you can make it all so you're all ready to go. It won't make any difference. Okay, so now I will set it aside. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is show you what I do with my jeans. So when you're working with old clothing, or you've purchased old clothing, just pre-wash it. So these, believe it or not, have been washed, and they still have grass stains, because it doesn't matter, I'm not going to use those. But guess what? There is actually people that are now de-stressing the jeans, and they're also making it so you can see the grass stains. Don't ask me why, that's just weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my jeans, and I'm going to cut up my leg. And this is my outside leg. Yes, it is. This is my outside leg. So I'm just going to cut up here. And I'm not going to get rid of that pocket, because I might like that. I'm not sure if I'm not going to use that later on. And then I'm just going to come across here. And yeah, I just think I might just be careful with that pocket, because I might want it. Come across here. And then come up here, because you don't know how much of that you might need. So don't be going wasting any denim. Okay. And also, just to let you know, I've also started to cut up another pair of jeans, and it really doesn't matter if they're different colours. It's just going to add to the whole recycling thing. Don't stress about it. It's just a fun project. So this is what's left of my other pair of jeans. In fact, I might use a piece of this in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to show you this. So here's my jeans. And I am going to draw a line. And I'm going to use my charcoal liner, which is this yellow one. And I'm going to draw a line all the way from here to there. So try and get it on the straight grain. So lay it down. You can see the grain lines going through your jeans. And when it's sitting flat, if you lay a ruler on it, you'll see that it will stay flat, so you know you're on the right grain. Then I'm going to use my charcoal liner. Yep. And you always know it goes better one way than the other. Of course, I had it upside down. And I'm going to go all the way to the end, because I want as much fabric as I can. Then I'm going to turn this around because I am right-handed. And I'm going to draw 2.5 inch strip all the way up there. But if you've got a good rotary cutter, you can cut this with the rotary cutter. So I'm going to do one strip, and then I'm going to do another strip. Now this is on the straight. We do not need this biased. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way up to there. Okay, so I could use my rotary cutter, but I always use my rotary cutter, so I'm going to use scissors to show you. And I put the scissors in a safe place. Here they are. So if you don't want to, you know, like if your rotary cutter's not really, really sharp, you can just scissor it. So these scissors are very, very sharp. And I'm just looking, following my yellow line, and I've got it on the right grain. Okay, and I'm doing my next line. So this is just purely a 2.5 inch strip of fabric, and you are going to need, if you are using, if you're going to be making out of recycled jeans, you'll need it, you probably won't need quite a couple of strips, but I will just use it anyway because I'm going to use it in other places. But you need about 1.10 meters of fabric, and you need 2.10 meters strips of fabric for what I'm going to show you in a minute. So I'm just getting everything prepared, and then you will be able to see what we're doing. Now, if I'm going to join this, I'm going to get rid of these bottom pieces because I don't want it that thick. So you can join these just on the straight and go straight down here. When you do that, you're going to end up with quite a bit of bulk, okay? I'll just cut that nice and straight. So I can do a seam down here, and I will end up with a bit of bulk there. So you can press your seams open. Or if you'd rather, you can put this together and you can go across here diagonally so that you'll end up with that. Okay, your choice. But I'm just going to do this because I want to show you how you flatten that before you sew. All right? So I am going to just stitch along here. It doesn't matter if I've got that thread on because I'll just quickly show you this before we stop. So I am going to put my ordinary foot back on. So remember. Oh, I did put it back in the right place. I'm going to tell my machine I'm going to use my 1D. D. There you go. Straight sewing, and always push clear. So you've cleared your machine, so you know it's gone back to center needle position. It really does not matter what colour I've got on at this stage, and I can put my jewel feet on if I want. So all I'm doing is sewing the right side to right side, and I'm just doing a seam down here. And it doesn't even matter how wide it is because it's just joining the two pieces together. Okay, so reverse. You want it nice and strong. Okay, now the reason why I want to show you this is because when you're doing denim, you can end up with a very fat seam. And we are going to open this out and press it, and then we're going to press this whole row of fabric in half like this, and then we're going to press it into the center, and we are going to press it like that. Now look how thick that is. So you can see why I said you can do it on an angle, because you wouldn't end up with that thick bulk. Okay, but I want to show you this because what I do, when I've got a bulk like that and I'm like, oh, I should have sewn it the other way, I get my girl hammer out. Where's my girl hammer? Oh, where is my girl hammer? Here it is. Look, check this out. So this is my girly hammer, and best friend, you use it a lot when you're sewing, but you don't tell your husbands, because these hammers, you can unscrew them, and they are a screwdriver. And then you can unscrew this bit, and it's a Phillips screwdriver, but wait, there's more. Then you can unscrew that, and you've got a small screwdriver, and then you can unscrew that, and you've got a tiny, tiny screwdriver. How cool is that? So these are not available from Bernina Tauranga. These are available from Mitre 10. Mitre 10 or Bunnings, or any of those sort of places have them, and they are really, really good. Oh, and the garden centres sell them. How bizarre. So the garden centres sell them. Oh, one moment. Forgot a whole piece. So the garden centres sell them as well. They're really good. But what I use them for, anyway, apart from putting studs in, is I get a bit of fabric, put it underneath, and when I've pressed all of this, I hammer it. But you've got to be careful because you can mark your fabric. So I get another bit of fabric and I put it over the top. Like that. And I usually do it on a board. But it just means that it flattens us down. So when you sew it now, even that's better. It's amazing. So we're going to stop for a break. But basically, I'm going to go to the iron. And I'm ironing it in half. Opening it up, ironing it together, and ending up with it all sandwiched like that. So I'm going to do that while you get yourself a cup of tea, and I'll see you in a minute.